Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to welcome you to the 2021 Africa Liberty Forum. My name is Brad Lips. I'm the CEO of Atlas Network, and I am super happy with the turnout today. Because we're connecting virtually this year, a lot of people here online are new to Atlas Network, and perhaps you're uncertain about what you're going to be experiencing over our next 2 days together. So let's go straight to a pretty fast-paced 3-minute video that's going to explain why Atlas Network exists and how we hope to be of assistance to all of you who are working for a freer, more peaceful, more prosperous Africa.
Well, Atlas Network is, as the name suggests, a network, and it's global. We work all around the world. We're based in the U.S. We have about 159 partners in the United States right now, and the bulk of our partners are outside, nearly 500 in total. It's a network, that is to say, organizations that share common values of limited government, of free enterprise, personal liberty, of personal responsibility, and work together to advance that agenda by rolling back big government, by reducing barriers to people making their lives better through creating wealth and owning property and engaging in trade.
Historically, wealthy nations around the world have tried to help low-income countries develop. The way we've been doing it traditionally has not really been working. It's pretty controversial both in terms of its efficacy and in terms of whether it's actually doing more harm than good. There's a movement to do development differently, and that means we need to step back as outsiders and rethink the role that we're playing in helping people in low-income countries achieve their dreams.
I think history will at some point make the difference between those who were just happy alleviating poverty, happy with the status quo, and those who said no. Because we respect everyone, we believe everyone has the right to manifest their fullest potential. We are going to work on the tool for them to get there, which is economic freedom. When it comes to that, I think Atlas Network has been the best.
You know, I think everybody wants two things. They want to make a difference, and they want to contribute to something bigger than themselves. And at Atlas Network, I'm able to do that.
It's inspiring to get to transcend partisan politics. Atlas Network is focusing on, I think, the most important and moral cause in the entire world.
You have the opportunity through Atlas Network to support some really inspiring people who are working in very difficult places and achieving results.
The United States does not have a lock on the idea of freedom and liberty. Human flourishing, freedom, liberty are borderless ideas.
I do think that our network adds real value, and the reason is we're focused on outcomes. And if you look at a return on investment as a philanthropist, I think Atlas Network delivers a very strong return on the investment.
What type of legacy do you want to leave behind? This exactly is the work of Atlas Network.
As you see, we have a global vision and a worldwide network. And this year, Atlas Network is celebrating our 40th anniversary. Now, I feel very privileged to have been around for more than half of this organizational history. And when I arrived in 1998, our team, frankly, knew of very little pro-liberty activity on your continent. It's thrilling that this has changed now in a big way. And I really see a lot of opportunity ahead in Africa's future, thanks to the great work that many of you are doing right now. Now, some of the reasons for optimism in Africa, as well as some of its stark realities, are discussed in my new book, Liberalism and the Free Society in 2021. We're going to be telling you about how you can get a free download of the book later in this program. I think that you'll find chapter 10 especially interesting. It's a chapter that presents a transcript of a conversation I had with Franklin Cujo from Ghana, Linda Kavuka from Kenya, as well as key players in Atlas Network's own Center for African Prosperity, Ibrahim Anoba, and of course, Magat Wade. I think you'll find that conversation to be really fascinating, just as you're going to find today's proceedings to be fascinating and useful. That's why we host Africa Liberty Forum, so you can be inspired by your peers and discover practical new ideas that you can be advancing to help the cause of liberty that we share. Now, I'm very grateful to the private donors who allow us to create these wonderful forums for learning. Let me list them now and express my appreciation to the John Templeton Foundation, the Smith Family Foundation, Templeton Religion Trust, Freda Utley Foundation, the Thomas W. Smith Foundation, and the Sarah Scaife Foundation. Thanks to the generosity of the people at these institutions who share a real sincere love for the freedom of others, we can be together today. One day soon, it's going to be in person again, but for now, this virtual environment will do, especially because we've got a great co-host organization helping us out with the 2021 Africa Liberty Forum, and that is the Center for Development and Enterprises Great Lakes. Let's welcome our friend, Imab Menerakiza. Imab?
Honorable Member of Parliament, dear leaders, ladies and gentlemen, any people here, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. It is a real pleasure for me to participate in the opening of this ceremony of this happy event, Africa Liberty Forum Online 2021. As stated by the CEO of Atlas Network, the Africa Liberty Forum main goal is to discuss different challenges facing our continent, but also talk about the different efforts of different think tanks that try to working in breaking down different barriers to prosperity and human dignity in Africa by influencing public policy with local solutions. We have here it well that through this forum, we are seeking how to move Africa forward to economic trajectory that can guarantee a better future for everyone in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, the goal of the Africa Liberty Forum meet those of the African people facing today many challenges such as restriction of trade, new regulation on the management of new business, degradation of democracy and individual freedom, culture and government intervention, which seriously reduces human rights, as well as the economic recession caused by new restriction imposed by most of African governments in the economic, in the COVID-19 response, which will push more than 16 million people in extreme poverty, according to the World Bank Index. Fortunately, the economic freedom based on local solution to end economic recession and the obstacle of a free society remain an essential tool to overcome the impasse of unemployment and the rise in poverty in our country today. Ladies and gentlemen, in recent years, the Africa Liberty Forum has united Africa to stand up against barriers to prosperity and dignity. This time, different leaders, advocates, and many actors come together again to discuss the strategy and the expect action to track the worst barriers to human dignity across Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, big governments are afraid of the people because they have seen that the power of passionate think tank in Africa based on the promotion of economic freedom influence social change, which reside today in public policy reform, which only can reduce the poverty in Africa and many other problems in Africa. In Africa, barriers to human dignity and economic freedom can never coexist. This is why the CD Great Lakes believe that nothing brings economic freedom unless there are people who care about it and they see its value and work for it and take risk, like many Atlas Network partners in Africa do it. With the Atlas Network, we are truly become a community. Will be the sense of family that stands for a free, just, and prosperous future for everyone in Africa. I take this opportunity to thank you, the Atlas Network team and the CD Great Lakes team for giving their best to bring us the best today through this event of the year. Ladies and gentlemen, what is freedom for us today? It is the ability to imagine what is the best and the project into the future and to make that future for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, let us stand up against the big government. Let us stand against the barriers to prosperity and human dignity in Africa. Let's make sure we leave this Africa in a better place than we have found it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imab. It's a real privilege to work with your team on what is going to be a great event, and that was the perfect pep talk to get us going. But it's now, let's go right into it, because we have got the sort of the elephant in the room that we're going to discuss first here as we inaugurate the sessions of Africa Liberty Forum 2021. We're going to talk about the pandemic that has wreaked havoc all around the world. We're all too familiar with the death toll of COVID-19. Of course, we also have the economic chaos that has been left in its wake throughout the world, and I believe very acutely inside of Africa. We really need to find the path forward toward economic growth, back to protecting individual freedoms and achieving the general prosperity that we all have as a goal. So let's get this session underway. I'm going to pass the baton here to Casey Pfeiffer, Atlas Network's Director of Institute Relations.
Thank you, Brad, and hello, everyone. I'm so glad that each of you joined us today. As Brad said, we're going to be talking about COVID-19's continued threat to public health, the public's freedoms, and how frustrating it is that it feels like the pandemic could not have hit at a worse time for Africa. When it hit, advances in economic freedom had been driving decreases in extreme poverty for decades, and we were seeing great strides in the areas of human rights and social freedoms. But in the past 18 months, we have seen substantial setbacks. To talk about where we are and how we might move forward, I would like to welcome a few of my friends to the stage. First, I'll welcome my friend Olumayoa Okadiran from Students for Liberty, based in Nigeria. Welcome, Olu.
Thank you very much.
And next, we'll welcome Phumlani Majozi from AfricanLiberty.org and the Institute for Race Relations in South Africa. Welcome, so good to have you, Phumlani.
Thanks, Casey. It's great to be here. I look forward to the conversation.
Me too, me too. And finally, Bruce Vaillant of the Center for Development and Enterprises, Great Lakes, based in Bujumbura in Burundi. Welcome, Bruce. So happy to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you here today.
During our time together, we'll have the privilege of hearing from this distinguished panel of change agents who are working to promote free societies and free people across the African continent. A substantial task at any time, but an even bigger challenge in the midst of a deadly global pandemic that has, in too many countries, not only resulted in a health crisis, but provided an opening to oppressive governments looking to exploit that crisis for expanded power and control over its people. Together today, we'll explore how think tanks and civil society organizations like those represented on our panel can help create an Africa that is opening the doors to economic liberalization, even as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to threaten lives, empower government corruption and control, and destabilize economies. So on that uplifting note, we'll get started with the panel. So first, I just wanted to ask each of our panelists to give us a 90-second, 2-minute sort of background on what is the COVID-19 story in your country, in your community. What has that looked like? Kind of what has the public's response been to it? Kind of give us the lay of the land quickly. So we'll go ahead and start with Phumlani, and then we'll move on from there. Phumlani?
Thank you so much, Casey. It's great to be here. It's great to be a participant in this in this forum. I did last speak at Africa Liberty Forum in Nairobi in August 2019. So it was nice to be there to meet people in person. And, things have changed. And as you've just said, Casey, things have changed over the past year. Drastic changes in how we as human beings interact with each other, how we work, and also, most importantly, which is what we are talking about today, our freedoms are being under threat in many ways. We saw that over the past year, and it was a global kind of phenomenon. where governments were sort of, at least in my observation, overreaching, in terms of trying to, in what they call an attempt to try and control the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. But your main question is around how have people in South Africa kind of reacted? What has government done? And, I'm one of those people who initially, here in South Africa, I sort of understood the government's decision to try and put in the lockdown. These were like 3 weeks of, when the first case was reported in the country. Reason being, we had to prepare. You need to prepare your healthcare facilities. You need to be ready for what could get worse, right? There were many sort of predictions of how things would go in South Africa because we have plus minus 7 million people who are HIV positive, right? And the narrative at the time was that because these people have weaker immune systems, therefore we are likely to see huge damage that would be done by the pandemic. But things have sort of, as we up to now, we have seen that there were many sort of wrong predictions that were made. But at the time, no one really was certain of how things would play out, right? So I understood the decision to try at least for 3-4 weeks to try and limit people's movements so we are able to prepare our healthcare facilities. And then from there, we can sort of take off, right? But then things sort of never really, we saw continuous sort of lockdowns that were very much strict. Many of them couldn't make sense, right? People losing jobs. In the first quarter, in fact, the second quarter of 2020 in South Africa, we saw a huge number of people losing jobs, right? So there has been, government over time overreacted and continued on lockdowns that were not really having that impact in terms of reversing the pandemic. Now, people's reactions have been largely sort of shaped by what they hear and what they are being told, right? If the reports almost every day say X amount of people have passed away, X amount of people have passed away, you hear this daily. So that again will sort of shape how people react toward the pandemic, right? And as a result of that, of the negative news that we saw on a daily basis, and we still continue to see, people thought, well, politicians know what is best for us. And therefore, we'll let them handle this thing. Let's let them do what they need to do. So there has been a bit of, we've sort of relaxed in South Africa and let government to sort of, take the leading role, of which in many ways, unemployment numbers now have shot up to shocking levels, even by global standards, because of, how government has sort of managed the pandemic over the past year. And I don't think South Africans have really, they've sort of let government be the institution that decides, and they've sort of put too much faith into it, whereas in many ways they've done damage in the country and to people.
Right. Thank you, Phumlani. Yeah, we talk about this a lot among think tank partners in the network. Once you sort of let government get that power to expand its reach, it's hard to take that back. Thank you so much. So we'll move from South Africa to Burundi and have Bruce kind of give us a quick 2-minute max lay of the land in Burundi and the COVID response.
Thank you so much, Casey. So first of all, I want to share with you an overview of how Burundi looked like when we entered in this COVID-19 pandemic. So it was already predicted that Burundi will have a recession of -2% of its growth. And also in terms of taking care, the medical, taking care of the population. We have less than one medical staff for 1,000 population in Burundi. and also in terms of spreading of the COVID-19, we have a population moving, refugees in other countries, neighboring countries. We have population moving in the country for main reason of insecurity. So to say that the situation was even worse before the COVID-19 pandemic. So the government saw that their response was even hard to find a solution. They didn't have a proper plan to respond to this situation. And what they did was to deny this pandemic. They said there was no pandemic in Burundi. And that had many consequences in the country. Because if we look on how the markets reacted, for a simple example, the basic food goods here in Burundi have increased almost for 20% for main of the goods here. Just because of the rumors of the population wondering what will be next. So this situation have caused also a reaction from the population, also which have been told by the government that the main problems will come from outside the country. So this was the strategy from the government to show that the problem is not inside, but will come from outside, from the people who will bring this COVID-19. And mainly this person will be the people doing trade with other countries. So this brought kind of people in Burundi to say we need to have our country closed, the borders closed, and that's what has happened. But mainly this is the situation, and it's not even better right now when we are speaking, yes.
Thanks so much for that context. I remember when we were first discovering that COVID-19 was a big threat, a real threat, I was actually visiting with your team in Bujumbura, so hope to see you again in person soon, Bruce. Okay, so we'll move on finally to Olamayowa in Nigeria. So Olamayowa, what does it look like in Nigeria? Give me the 2-minute lay of the land.
Thank you very much, Casey. It's nice to be here and to be sharing a stage with my friends from Burundi and from South Africa. Like many other Africans would say, that Nigerians are, most of the time really cocky, and we like to show like we're in charge. We know what we're doing. It's the same thing with the government as well. First and foremost, the government was really cocky in believing that they understood how to approach the situation, and because of the successes of handling Ebola, the Ebola crisis a couple of years ago. Successfully handling that, there was the assumption that the government was capable of handling COVID-19. So that unfortunately, was able to show. We could see that they did not have like proper plans, and the healthcare system was in shambles. Even as I speak, there are hospitals, government hospitals, where medical doctors have not been paid since January. Just a couple of days ago, medical doctors at the University College Hospital in the city where I am were on strike because they've not been paid since January. That happens. It's weird that is happening during a pandemic. And, you can say the same thing about other government hospitals around the country. The response of the government was also like they borrowed a template, right? There was no critical thinking about our unique situation, how COVID will affect Nigeria, the demography. It was basically the government taking a look at other countries and saying, look, this is what they did. They shut down the economy. Therefore, we should shut down the economy. And that was what they did. Unfortunately, it had like very negative consequences when you just wake up one morning and say, look, the United States is shutting down, other countries are shutting down. That's the approach to take. Not factoring into their plan that about 62% of Nigerians are below the age of 25, and just about 5% of the population is above 60. And that's the demography that is disproportionately affected by COVID, and because they're likely to have other complications. So it was absurd that the government chose that approach just to shut down the economy, and it had of course had negative consequences, considering the fact that Nigeria at that point, Nigeria relies heavily on crude oil, and the price of oil was going down significantly. I mean, it's been going down significantly for the past couple of years, right? And so that Nigeria's income from crude oil had diminished significantly. COVID, added its own to the mix, and then the government was responsible in how they approached the solution to COVID. And this has led to what's been called the worst recession in 4 decades in the country. There's also all sorts of issues around the response. The private sector stepped up under a banner called the Coalition Against COVID-19, CACOVID, which was a private sector task force that was in partnership with the federal government of Nigeria and the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, as well as the World Health Organization. And the sole aim was to sort of create like a soft landing for people who were affected by the lockdowns, right? And a lot of billions of naira actually went into providing relief materials. Unfortunately, if you just go to Google and Google it, you would find pictures and videos of warehouses where those relief materials were locked up, with rumors that the government was, politicians and people in power were, looking at the possibility of rebranding this private sector provided relief materials for sale, or for them. Some of them were sharing with their friends and with their families. So it just goes to show that there's a lot of, it was all very disorganized. But luckily for us, perhaps because of the demography, perhaps because of weather, we're not sure exactly yet. There's there are conflicting reports on that. We've not been hit. The number of death toll in the country has not been as high as we've seen in other countries. However, it's important that the government takes a lesson from this and ensures that subsequent emergencies like this, we are prepared and we don't have to just scamper around trying to find immediate unprepared solutions.
Thank you, Mayo, and thanks to all of our panelists for giving us that background. So my next question is sort of a follow-up here. So we're hearing a lot about lockdowns and sort of the problematic responses of the government. I'm interested to hear if any of you see opportunities with the pandemic. So I know that in some countries, some think tanks have seen opportunity to sort of increase flexibility when it comes to different things like licensing and healthcare and things like this. For you and your communities, did you see anything like that? So I guess I'll start with Bruce. Did you see anything like that with the pandemic where it seemed like an opportunity to advance economic freedom as a think tank in Burundi?
Yeah, thank you. So for us in Burundi, as a think tank, the opportunity we got with the pandemic, we got the chance to talk about one of the issues which was hard to say before the pandemic. It's the issue about how our healthcare system is built. So we've got the chance to go deep and try to get proofs and to show that it's not only the COVID-19 which is a problem for our healthcare system. So we've got the chance to engage with many people, with other actors in Burundi, to show how our health system was very weak for reacting to the pandemic. And before this situation, it wasn't possible for us to talk about this issue. So, and also in terms of cross-border trade, here in Burundi, we've got the chance also to highlight how it is how the cross-border trade is important. Is important for our country because, as I said before, when the pandemic started, the government response was to accuse the neighboring countries that those are the countries bringing COVID in Burundi. But after that, they come to realize when we was locked, when the borders was closed, they come to realize how important this cross-border trade was. So it also gives us opportunity to say, to show, let's see how we can move better with how we do trade with our neighboring countries. So these are the main two opportunities that we've got as a think tank here in Burundi and on which we are building to advance economic freedom in Burundi.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, it's so important as the think tank and civil society community that we're able to sort of capitalize and see the opportunity when there's crisis and try to make the best of a really tough situation. So I'll move to Phumlani to just kind of broaden that question a little bit to get your perspective of what you think the top two roles, maybe your top two of the role of civil society in a pandemic crisis. What have you seen in South Africa where civil society can be really effective in advancing human rights, economic freedom, and personal liberties?
Well, what has happened in South Africa over the past year, which was very shocking, very disturbing, is the high rates of state corruption, right, around what is called the COVID relief funds, right? So you guys in America have had the same thing as well, where government basically dishes out money and that's called COVID relief. And then in South Africa, there was a lot of corruption around it. The whole process, the COVID-19 also highlighted the high rates of corruption in South Africa. Right now, as we speak, the Minister of Health, right, is embroiled in corruption allegations. This week he took long leave, right? This week because of the corruption allegations that we heard that have dominated the media, right? So, I mean, that in a way was sort of an opportunity for NGOs to highlight that. And in South Africa, we are very lucky to have a very good kind of active civil, NGOs that is very active. Though, of course, some have sort of various sort of objectives and missions, but those that try and point out government's corruption, they've had an opportunity, and in many ways, they have done quite well in the sense that there's been a great deal of exposure when it comes to corruption, right?
Yeah.
And then one opportunity as well that emerged over the past year was in South Africa, we have labor unions dominate, especially in the public sector. They are very active and they influence public policy in a very big way, right? We have state-owned enterprises, government-owned companies that are basically, consuming a lot of taxpayers' money, right? The company that supplies electricity or power, it's one company in South Africa. It's called Eskom. It's owned by government. Right now, as we speak, on a daily basis, we are experiencing power outages, right? So that environment, we also have, when you look at South Africa, when you compare the labor costs in the emerging markets, South Africa's labor costs, they tend to be higher compared to many countries in the emerging markets. Why? Reason being, there's been wrong reform, when it comes to the labor market, in the sense that we've seen more and more, government regulations, the minimum wage laws, the laws that make it hard to fire someone, to fire an employee, I should say. So since 1994, since we got democracy in 1994, there's been an exponential increase, in government regulations, in the labor market. And as a result, we are where we are because of such an environment, right? Mm-hmm. Now, those issues that I've pointed out, in a way, this has been, over the past year, has been an opportunity for many of us in the NGO sector to say, the only way to sort of recover GDP contraction that we had last year, the way to recover is to, lift regulations, cut taxes, privatize. We can't have only one company supplying electricity, right? And it's a government-owned, right? So that opportunity has come, and we are seeing, to an extent, there's been minimal changes that government is doing. But of course, politicians, especially in our case, where unions dominating the public sector, where they influence and they're aligned with the ruling party, so it becomes, those things aren't happening because of such an environment. But so there has been a big opportunity for us as advocates of markets to say it is now that you need pro-market policies,
right,
in order to recover speedily, from
Absolutely.
the big contraction that we had last year.
Right. Thanks, Phumlani. So I'll move to Mayowa here. I know, Mayowa, we've talked about sort of whether Nigeria will get access to vaccinations and when. And so it kind of the discussion about corruption makes me think of, advocates of improving state capability, right? So building up governments so that they have the capability to do things like roll out vaccines. So can you talk a little bit about what that's going to look like in Nigeria and the tension between those two things when it comes to, the corruption that Phumlani highlighted and sort of the need for the state to be able to carry out these things like vaccination rollout?
Thank you very much, Casey. As expected, when the first batch of vaccines hit the country, the first set of people who had access to it were not medical practitioners. They are not the people fighting at the forefront of the battle against COVID. It was politicians, their friends, and their cronies. And that goes to show that many of these guys, the guys in politics, many of these politicians are not only very corrupt, but also very heartless, right? You would expect that when the first batch of COVID vaccines got into the country, the medical practitioners who were on the forefront, who were dealing with patients who were, infected by COVID, will be the first to get access to the vaccines, especially considering that many of them were not paid during that period. The politicians got it, and they were flaunting it on Instagram, taking pictures of shots that they received, saying, go get your vaccine, go get your vaccine. There was no vaccine to get anywhere, right?
Right.
But thankfully, over the next, after the first batch came and the second batch, people are beginning to get vaccines. Medical practitioners who were fighting COVID have access to vaccines now. It's still very difficult to get, but at least we're seeing that it's not only accessible only to politicians and their cronies and their families right now. And we hope that stays that way. The rollout has been very slow, as expected, because anything that has to do with logistics, the government is really poor at managing that. But we're thankful that things are in a much better place than they were a couple of months ago.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Maya.
Casey, can I jump in?
Of course, yeah.
Can I jump in?
Please do.
Mayowa raises a very important point here when it comes to access to resources, right? And he has been speaking about the vaccine, right? That politicians who are governing the country are in control of the rules and of the process. They are the ones who made sure that their personal interests come first, right? Mm-hmm. Then those of the citizens, right? In other words, what I'm trying to get to here, or the point I'm trying to make, is that if you have a group of people who have enormous powers to control the country, right? In other words, if you have what you guys usually call in America, when I watch TV, big government, I hear a lot of big government in America, right? So if we have big government, if I can call that, That's what happens, right? So rather expand the powers of these people, make the government smaller, right? So you try and, constrain these things, because the bigger the government is, as former US President once said, Ronald Reagan, the bigger the government is, that's where you'll see, liberty going downhill.
Thanks, Phumlani. Yeah, it's a great point, and kind of tying into the shifting gears here a little to Bruce and Burundi, we were talking about sort of when it comes to big government, that doesn't just apply to economic rights, but it also applies to whether you're even allowed to critique the government response to a pandemic. So Bruce, can you talk a little bit about what that has looked like for the CDE team in Burundi, being able to even speak about the government response, and what's one practical lesson you've learned from trying to do that during this time?
So as it is, I guess, for other think tanks in Africa or all over the world, our work have been even harder in this situation. And this was worst in Burundi because in Burundi, how the government managed to control the information was to say that there is a committee of experts and government agents who was in charge to coordinate the response to the COVID-19. So in all the country, those were the only persons allowed to speak about COVID-19. So speaking about COVID-19, giving numbers, talking about consequences, economic consequences of COVID-19, social consequences, this was even a situation which could bring you to be caught and brought to jail. So this was a hard situation for us. This was a situation where even in our team, the first time we doubt about the position we needed to take in this situation. So it took us quite time to sit down with the team and to try to have the engagement of all the team and to come up with a kind of way to come back to the stage and to have the right to talk about the situation. So our very first war was to make sure that we bring back even this right to talk about the situation, to talk about COVID-19. So the chance we got was that we had already a network of partners here in Burundi. We made a first contact for our partners and start discussing about this situation. And what we have found out was no one had the information. No one knew how to react about this. Everyone was relying only on what those experts of the government will need to say. But we found that everyone also needed to talk, needed to contribute. And this was our very first stage. And we approached people and we tried to say, hey, there are people here trying also to help. There are people here trying also to contribute. And from that, we started to have opportunities to bring our voice and to speak and so on. And we got the chance now to start being listened progressively, and now it's fine. We have this door, we have this opportunity to talk to everyone in Burundi about the situation, even though there are still other issues we can talk about, but at least we have the right to talk about the situation and to give some advice.
And that's so important because if you hadn't done that, right, if you hadn't sort of set your priorities strategically, like this is the main one, and then we move on from there, you wouldn't have been able to make the impact that CDE has recently made on cross-border trade restrictions being rolled back. So can you tell us a little bit about your success there? Just, you know, a 2-minute summary of your success in rolling back trade restrictions at the border.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I can just talk about two things we had, because with cross-border trade, we have got even many things more than what we expected, positive things coming in this situation of COVID-19. So first of all, the cross-border trade in Burundi was considered as informal trade. So this was bringing a situation where there was for you to do cross-border trade, you needed to pass over 19 physical barriers, and in each barrier there was different government agents. So those were 19 government agents where you needed to pass to make sure that you do the cross-border trade. So we've got the chance during this situation. The government have seen that it's very important to do the cross-border trade because when they closed the borders and they saw how the economy was affected. Now they saw that this trade was very important, and now this trade is considered as a formal trade here in Burundi. So the impact of this only change was that those physical barriers was reduced from 19 to 4. So this means that many of these agents were there just for corruption, for getting money from traders. So they didn't have any interest to continue this. So also now we have all the borders of Burundi opened. Now we have the borders of Burundi opened, and the trade is starting to run. So these are very great changes in this situation, which shows us that there are still opportunities for us to push free trade in Africa, especially in Burundi.
Thank you, Bruce. Really inspiring what you're able to accomplish, and so important, as you point out. Trade is more important than ever in a pandemic when people are struggling to get the goods that they need. So I'll move on to Mayowa here and just ask, you know, it is difficult, as Bruce has pointed out, as a civil society organization to know where to start in responding to crisis. So can you share just a quick practical lesson that the team at Students for Liberty in Africa has learned about where you can make an impact?
Yeah, thank you very much, Casey. First and foremost, because of the way we are structured, we are a mostly bottom-up organization. And so that means that, and we are also spread across the continent of Africa. So that meant that the strategies that we employed in dealing with this, issue and how we engage was mostly very local, right? Because it had to reflect the local realities of the respective countries and even respective regions. And so there are all sorts of different strategies employed to ensure that it was not just one size fits all. But some of those was basically constantly using social media to remind other young people when governments start taking away their freedoms to speak out, right? It was also forming coalitions with organizations that might not, typically be called, pro-liberty. However, because they have a stand with respect to the overreaching approach of the government, sort of building coalitions with organizations like that share overlapping similarities, even if it's just on that one single issue, is very important. It's very critical. I do not believe that the fight is over because many of the restrictions that the governments across the continent put in place still exist. Like Pumlani said, it's difficult to just roll back all of this big government they are the overreach of the government as a result of, responding to COVID. It's going to take gradual, a gradual fight, gradual steps to roll these things back. And Students for Liberty is committed to ensuring that we educate and, disseminate the ideas of liberty to ensure that many more young Africans understand what the government is doing and stand up for their rights, whatever country that they are.
It's so critical. Thank you, Mayowa. Okay, so we're running out of time. So I just want to ask each person to give me a 30-second answer to this question. We'll start with Phumlani. So it was a bleak year, a bleak 18 months. So what got you up in the morning to keep sort of working to liberate your fellow citizens? What kind of keeps you going and inspires you? So Phumlani, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so what keeps me going and inspires me is that I tend to try and write a lot locally, right? And advance the ideas of markets. Mayowa knows that. I write a lot as senior fellow at African Liberty. So what has pushed me or motivated me is I believe it is the time now to pursue pro-market reforms. And over the past 18 months, I have been pushing and driving that very hard. Mayowa knows the work that I do and he follows it. And, trying to get South Africans to realize that it's time for pro-market reforms. To me, what's happened over the past year, it's been an opportunity. So I'm pushing on that.
Thank you, Phumlani. Bruce, what about you? What gets you up in the morning to liberate your fellow citizens in Burundi?
Thank you so much. So what I think is I can't rely on bureaucracy. I'm in a group which have to think faster, the bureaucracy and the government, and that makes me proud. Every morning when I wake up, that makes me very proud to be faster than the government and bureaucracy. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Okay, Mayowa, you've got the last word here. What gets you up in the morning? What inspires you?
Knowing that this is my country, knowing that my family is here, my daughter is here, knowing that even if I flee the country, even if many of us flee the country, we're still going to have family here. Knowing all of this is the reason why I wake up every morning and try to defend the rights, fight for the rights of not only of myself, but for every Nigerian.
Couldn't have put it better, Mayowa. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for being with us. Throughout our conversation, I found myself full of admiration at not only our panelists' intellectual prowess and professional accomplishments, but also their obvious and sincere love for the freedom of others, as Mayowa just so eloquently put it. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Mayowa, Phumlani, and Bruce as much as I did. Thanks for being with us, and stay tuned for lots more great content coming right up.
All right, thank you very much, Casey, for getting us off to a great start with this first panel. Very fun to be learning from Mayowa, Phumlani, and Bruce to start our time together. And thank you all for being part of our session. If you made it here, you're probably navigating our event platform just fine, but let me call attention to a couple of features you may have missed. First, if you haven't seen it already, check out the welcome instructional video in the event lobby. It tells you everything you need to know about our event platform, and you can find the link to the video right in the center of the event lobby page. Also, hey, it was great to begin this session with some words from Imab. We're very thankful to him and Bruce and the full team at Center for Development and Enterprises Great Lakes for their help in making this event a success. I'd encourage you to click on the link in the top left corner of your screen to learn more about our co-host, CDE Great Lakes, a wonderful organization. Now, all of our sessions are going to be available on demand, so if you need to step away, no problem. You'll be able to go to the event program and watch content that will be preserved and archived after we have recorded it live. And finally, if you have any need for help at all throughout the forum, just click the help button in the bottom left corner. A member of our team will be available to assist you. We're taking a short break, but get ready for our next session called Liberalism and Women's Rights in Africa. Thank you for being part of Africa Liberty 2021. We will see you soon.